Have you felt like you're going through your life not feeling like you're enough? Well, stick around because in this video, I'm going to talk about how you can feel like you're enough. Welcome to another episode of Fearless and Power Tube. I'm Sharon Koenig of fearlesspursuits.com, and this is the place to be to create a better version of you. I create videos all about intentional living, all things mindset, and online entrepreneurship. So if that sounds like something that you're into, consider subscribing. All right, so I'm going to talk about why it is we feel this way, maybe share a story or two with you, and then a strategy on what it is you can do to help you feel like you're enough. So I really feel like we all know why we feel like we're not enough, but just in case, let's talk about it a little bit. So we realize from a psychology standpoint that we are who we are based on our past, based on past events specifically. And meaningful parents and leaders in our life have taught us a thing or two about how to feel. And it is really our perception of what it is we want to be, who it is we want to be, and how we want to behave. So we realize with our parents and our teachers and other people that may have come into our life that they are ultimately doing the very best that they can for who they are at that time in their life. Certainly there's a lot of people that feel a great deal of resentment having that awareness that somebody maybe created this feelings in us, but understand that it's really our child's mind that decided that it's me, it's my fault, that created this awareness of not being enough and having self-worth issues. So if you've been following me for any length of time, then you know a little bit about me. But just in case you're new to the channel, I'll share with you a little bit about why I started Fearless Pursuits to begin with, but a lot of it had to do with my life of living in fear. This fear comes from the events of my past, comes from being brought up by basically no one. My mother was an alcoholic, which is really no big surprise. A lot of other parents are alcoholics and that sort of thing. But suffice it to say, there was no father, there was no mother in my life, and I was brought up on my own. And I thought for a long time that it was all my fault, like I wasn't good enough to have a parent in my life. And it was a really big problem for me, and there was a lot of violence and that sort of thing. And I thought that the violence was all my fault too. But I had had enough at one point, and I basically ran away from home, and I was homeless. And I really felt like all of these things that were happening were all my fault. And it was my perception of it now as an adult with an intellectual knowing that these people in my life were doing the best for who they were at the time. And that it had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with me, of who I was at the time, just a young child doing the very best that I could for the situation and the circumstances that I had in my life. And I know with you, for example, whatever your situation is, whatever you've been presented with in your life, it wasn't you. And now you know that on an intellectual level, right? So we're dealing with two sides of us. We're dealing with this intellectual side, the knowing that these events that happened in our life wasn't all about us. It's not my fault. It's not because of me. And then we have this emotional, wounded child, the emotional side of us that really makes us feel bad because we decided this as a young child. It was a decision that we made as a young child with not having the proper tools to really work through this situation and the circumstances that brought us to these feelings. We just made a decision, and we carried this decision throughout our entire lives. So you know this, I know this, everyone knows this, it's all been written, it's all been documented, and we don't necessarily have to go to a psychotherapist to understand that this is the reality for us. And we don't have to dive into these situations so that we can work through it per se. What we really want to do is we want to move beyond that. And this is where I'm going to share with you even more. You know, and as an adult, there were a lot of things that happened to me. You know, like my marriage, for example. I was married for 20 years and I never got that love and attention. He was always gone. He didn't hold my hand, and it was a very loveless marriage. And as an adult, I decided that it was me. It was my fault. I would try all sorts of things to try to get him to give attention to me. And ultimately, nothing worked. So it must be me. It must be my fault. And the thing is that what we realize is that sometimes two people or more shouldn't necessarily be together. They're not a good mix. Whatever it was going on with my family growing up, whatever it is that was going on with my ex-husband, for example, had nothing whatsoever to do with me. And yet, I didn't realize that on an intellectual level. I was strictly living in reaction mode. I was strictly living in this emotional world where everything was my fault. A very narcissistic sort of view. Really, I feel like that's what it was. And then after a while, and this is where you can kind of get into some of your own techniques and strategy, you start to feel like, dang it, I deserve better. Some people will go down into a depression. Some people will begin to feel attacked and just feel like their self-worth is just so bad that they can't really do much of anything. That was how bad it was for me by the time I got divorced, and even a year or two after that. And it seemed like I had a lot of healing that I had to do, and maybe it was time that was passing that was healing for me. But realizing that I ultimately needed to talk to myself, the self-talk, the journaling, all of those things that we do are so tremendously beneficial. And I suggest to you, if you don't journal, journal now. It will be something that will help heal you. Just get yourself a book and begin to journal about it. And again, I think it's not important for us to dive deep into the why, but more talk about what it is you want for yourself, realizing that there's a tremendous amount of freedom that comes when we decide that there is more for us. And ultimately, this is the strategy. So we realize that all of this damage can't be undone. The truth is that it is tattooed on our minds, which is why I talk about mindset so much. You know, it factors into our relationships, the love relationships that we want so desperately to have. It factors into our business, this freedom, this money that we want. Ultimately, we can't have that if we have self-worth issues. Imagine someone trying to do marketing for their business when they don't feel like they're enough. They're never ever going to present their offer out into the world if they don't feel like they're enough. And we realize this in ourselves. When we don't feel like we're enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not smart enough, we beat ourselves up. And we're always trying harder to be the best that we can, or we're always attacking ourselves and not trying whatsoever to be better. So with intentional living being at the core of what it is I like to teach, because I feel like there's so many different ways that we can use this in our personal life and in our professional life. Thinking about your career, for example, and maybe even changing careers and going after what it is you want. When we think about that for a moment, we realize what we need is courage. When you are dealing with tremendous amounts of self-worth issues, you are in a state of fear. This is a state of mind. This is the way that we carry ourselves low, you know, and we don't feel like we are very strong and holding ourselves up and feeling confident to do anything, to go after asking for a raise, to go after a new career, because what do we say? I'm not good enough for that. I don't know enough. How could I do that? Thinking about maybe dating, right? And finding your one true love. You are thinking, I could never have him. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. So what we're doing constantly is dragging ourselves down, and really we're not doing the things that we want because we're living out of fear. It's a state of mind, which is where fearlesspursuits.com came from. I wanted freedom. I wanted more money. I wanted to feel better. I wanted everything. I wanted the moon. And the only way that I could go after that was to really work on myself with my mind, because I realized everything that we want, everything that we don't have and that we want comes from our mind. And there's no escaping this reality. I know you know that. You don't need me to stand here before you and tell you that. So what do? The damage can't be undone because it's tattooed on our minds. I want you to realize that what you're carrying around with you is someone else's baggage. And when you realize that maybe it was your parents who didn't treat you right, maybe it was your ex-husband, maybe it's you, maybe realizing that this baggage, this heavy, heavy baggage was theirs to burden and not yours at all. So what do? I'll tell you what I did. I got mad. And you know, sometimes people say that this anger isn't productive, it's not healthy. Well, I believe that to a point it most certainly is. Because like when I was a child, I had had enough, and I was going to leave this abusive home. I was going to go out because there was this part of me that knew there was something better out there for me. Didn't know what it was at the time, but I sure knew I was better than this. I didn't have to live in this abusive environment. So I left. There I was, homeless and eating out of garbage cans, for God's sakes. You know, it's as if you're jumping out of the fire and into the frying pan and living in fear. What's going to happen to me now? But it took a lot of anger and frustration and being absolutely fed up to leave that situation. Fast forward to my marriage. After 20 years of marriage and not being loved, I realized I'm getting older now. I am going to die without ever being loved, without being touched and caressed like each and every one of us deserves to be. We deserve to have the moon, the stars, and everything that life has to offer us. We're spiritual beings living this human experience, and we deserve more. And I'm telling you, if you don't feel like you deserve more, I'm telling you, you do. And that's the first place to start. Understand that this baggage that you're carrying around is not yours to carry. Drop the baggage. Just imagine now. You're holding on to this baggage and it's heavy. It's very, very heavy. And it's full of all of those memories. And it's full of the emotion and the angst that you feel. Now close your eyes for a moment and drop it. Just drop the baggage. And now feel how free you are. Now scoot it with your foot. Close your eyes and imagine your foot scooting that baggage away from you. Now turn and walk away in your mind. We want to imagine getting rid of this baggage. Now open your eyes and realize you are free. This is your life now. You get to look at your life in a new way. Recreate yourself. That's what I did. It all started from finally being fed up. I deserve to be loved. I know that there's a soulmate out there for me, and I found him. Yes, I did. I manifested my one true love, and we have the most beautiful relationship. And if I had lived in that marriage, that loveless marriage, if I had not gotten so angry and fed up, I would never have met my soulmate, who makes me so happy. And understand that whatever your situation is, you've got to get fed up. If you want more money in your career, get fed up with where you're at. You deserve a raise. That's right. Think about what it is you need to do. Maybe you would have to learn something new, but you've got to get some courage. You've got to get fed up, and you've got to walk in there and ask for that raise. Maybe it's time for you to transition into a new career. What do you got to do? Drop that baggage. You don't need that anymore. Now you can recreate yourself and be who it is you want to be, and go create some action in your life so that you can go out and get a new career, a new job, something that fills you up. Because ultimately life is too short for you to be living this life where you're stuck, where you feel stuck, where you feel like you're not enough. You know deep down you deserve more. What you need to do is to become your own personal trainer. So now think about a personal trainer. What do? You hire someone to kick your butt in the gym and to talk to you about your diet, and they just push you and they push you. So what you have to do is you push yourself to condition your mind. You need to have a strong mind so that you don't fall back into the self-worth issues. And yes, it will happen. It happened to me. It happened over and over again. I would have triggers that would pop up, and somebody would say something, or I would be in front of a handsome man or something, and I was very attracted to him, but thinking I was not pretty enough, I was too old, or whatever it was. And I was not enough for him. I wasn't smart enough. I didn't have enough money, whatever the situation was. But you've got to say enough is enough and get mad. Journal about this. Talk to yourself while you're writing and decide that you are enough. Make a decision that you're enough. Write down all of the reasons why you're enough. Now, don't even bring that bag back about whatever abuse was there. Maybe someone told you weren't enough. Maybe their actions made you feel like you weren't enough. Like what happened with me. Most of my life I've spent where people neglected me and abandoned me, literally abandoned me. And I never felt like I was lovable. And that baggage comes up sometimes. I realize I need some attention. But what we have to do is we have to condition our mind to be strong with decisions. Those decisions in an intellectual state, not the emotional state. That emotional state is what will carry you back to low self-worth. So stay strong with the intellectual knowing that you indeed are deserving. You are enough. It doesn't matter if you're comparing yourself to someone, because that is a no-no. What we do is we realize who we are in this moment, and we say that we're enough, and we don't compare ourselves. Comparisonitis will really just drag us down, and this is no place for us to be. So if there's someone that you're comparing yourself to, I suggest that you just stop that right away, because it's not helping you in any way. It's not lifting you up and empowering you. Try the Superwoman pose, Superman pose, doesn't matter if you're a guy or a gal. Stick your chest out, your chin up, and do the Superwoman pose before you get on stage, before you go and ask for that raise, before you go in for that interview, before you go and ask for that hot guy's phone number, before you go on that first date with that hot guy. That's right, Superwoman pose. And talk to yourself about how you're recreating a badass lady or guy, because it can happen. I tell you, someone like me, the situation where I'm from, those years of feeling like I wasn't enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable enough. If I can come out of that, I know you can. Get mad, start journaling, and start demanding more. Make a decision today that you are worthy. Well, I hope this video was helpful for you, and if it was, give it a thumbs up. Also, I put out videos every single week on mindset and intentional living and all things online entrepreneurship. So if that sounds like something that you want, consider subscribing today and click the bell so that you'll get notified of fresh videos when I upload them. That's all I've got for you today. Thanks so much for watching. This is Sharon Koenig. I'm out.